Welcome back to another CARE Conversation. We have a special guest today. He is the top election official in the state of Minnesota, the Secretary of State, Steve Simon. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
I think it's wonderful that you're here because I have so many questions from so many different people to get to clear a lot of things up before the election coming up just a few weeks away here. And I want to start with how you're doing. I understand 2 weeks ago I covered a story. You guys received a suspicious package. The return address said United States Traitor Elimination Army. There was some white powder substance inside of it. You guys were evacuated. One, how you doing? B, have you ever been a victim of this sort of abuse or this sort of threat?
Well, I've never had something specifically like this happen, but it happened to all of us in the office. Thank goodness no one was hurt, no one was harmed. The testing showed that it was non-hazardous material, and we weren't the only ones. There were a number of states also that received this. I guess there's some comfort in that, right? But, it's a sad sign of the times, but we're not letting it keep us down. We're not letting it take our eye off the ball, which is November 5th. We got an election to run. So everyone was safe. It's full steam ahead, and we just got to put it behind us, and we are.
Are you worried at all?
I'm cautiously optimistic, actually. I really am. There are people who are always going to try to stir the pot and disrupt, and this was an example of that, clearly. But in the end, I have faith in Minnesotans. I'm an optimist about our democracy in Minnesota and nationally. Sometimes democracy is messy. It feels a little bit dinged and dented in recent years, but never defeated. We got an election to put on, and we're going to do it.
All right, let's talk about automatic voter registration down at the DMV's office, Department of Public Service. So last year, a new law passed registering people to vote when they update or get a new driver's license. So you get registered to vote, get a new license. Another law also passed, though, allowing undocumented immigrants the ability to get a driver's license or a state ID.
That's right.
Some could see maybe an issue here.
Right.
So there are reports that about 1,000 automatic voter registrations were flagged as possibly ineligible. And then you got a letter from 4 Republican Minnesota Congress members last month citing concerns over this about potentially registering undocumented immigrants to vote. Question is, how can you ensure automatic registration at the DMV while making sure that people are eligible to vote?
Right. So here's the deal. The law is crystal clear, thankfully. So during this process, the only records that the Department of Motor Vehicles, that the Department of Public Safety is supposed to be sending on for possible registration, the only records have to be of people who have provided citizenship affirming documentation, which is a mouthful. It means you got to show a passport, you got to show a birth certificate, or you have to show naturalization.
So in order to be registered to vote at the DMV,
correct,
you have to show a passport, naturalization papers, or one of the other documents that prove you're a citizen.
That's right.
That's
or a birth certificate.
So that's the only thing that goes through to your office.
Only thing that goes through to our office.
Well, then what's these 1,000?
Because we discovered this summer, one was through a self-report and one was some other way. We discovered people saying, hey, maybe there was a glitch here, some human error. We looked into it, and we asked the Department of Public Safety, they're the ones running the show at the driver's license office. We said, look, you guys got to do a manual look at every single one of these things that you've done. Not a sample, not a poll. We want you to look at every single one to make sure that everything's on the up and up. And they discovered roughly 1,000. These are not ineligible voters. I want to stress that. These are just folks who did not provide the level of documentation needed to be registered to vote. That can mean eligible people. I work with a number of people in our office who said that could have been me.
Mm-hmm.
Supply that information because I wasn't interested in that.
Yeah.
I wasn't interested in that real ID, heightened sort of driver's license. So I just want to emphasize that. This isn't 1,000 ineligible people.
Got it.
It's 1,000 people who didn't show the documents you would need if you wanted to be registered to vote. So what we did immediately, took us about 2 seconds, is we decided just in an abundance of caution, let's not take any chances. We are going to inactivate those records. And we did, and that's a good thing. And we checked, and in the August primary, this all happened in the run-up to the August primary and the immediate aftermath, we detected 0 people who voted who were ineligible on that basis, 0. So we think that we and they caught it, and we recommended to them, and they said yes, that from now on, 2 sets of eyes, not just one, because people make mistakes, and they clearly did in that instance, but 2 sets of human eyes are now going to look at each and every record.
Are you another filter, though? Once it gets past the Department of Public Safety, DMV, do you guys double check those registrations?
So one of the things we do in our office, not just as to immigration status, but as to anything, including things like deceased voters, is we subscribe to multiple databases from the federal government and the state government to filter and screen and vet people who seek to register to vote. Let me give you another but related example. A question I often get is, well, how do you know about dead people, right? How do you know when someone dies? How do you know to take them off the voter rolls? Here's how we know. We have millions of voter registrations in Minnesota, but we subscribe in our office to 2 death databases, believe it or not. It's kind of a morbid subject.
It literally is a morbid subject.
It literally is a morbid
But it's important.
So we have 2 of them. There's the Social Security Death Index from the federal government
Okay.
and the Minnesota Department of Health Death Index. And we regularly run the millions of records through those 2 death indexes to determine who is deceased, who's on the voter rolls.
So if the government knows that you've passed away, you can't vote.
Correct.
Plain and simple.
Correct.
All right, that seems pretty clear.
Yeah.
A recent Pew Research poll shows 81% of Americans support having to show a government ID when you vote. By party, 95% of Republicans said they wanted to see ID when you vote. 69% of Democrats polled favored that idea. What's your take on it? Would it not help ensure accuracy and trust?
Well, let me just zoom out for a minute.
Sure.
To even get into the system in Minnesota, to register to vote, for example, you have to show 2 common sense things that everyone I know and have ever met supports. You have to show that you are who you say you are, and you live where you say you live. That's since almost the beginning of time in Minnesota, been the way we do it, and no one can disagree with that. But here's the catch. In Minnesota, the law is pretty flexible, and it says that there are a number of things you can use to show that you are who you say you are and you live where you say you live. It can be a driver's license, but not everyone has one of those. And more to the point, some people have a valid driver's license, but maybe it reflects an address that they just moved from 6 months ago or a year ago. So our approach in Minnesota has always been, of course you have to show who you are and where you live, but it doesn't necessarily and always have to be a government-issued photo ID.
Is it unconstitutional to force every citizen who wants to vote to get a government-issued ID?
No, I don't think it's unconstitutional, and the courts have ruled on that. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled on that a decade and a half ago. But remember, in 2012, Minnesotans actually voted on this. There was a constitutional amendment proposing that in order to vote, you needed a government-issued photo ID.
Yeah.
That's a pretty narrow requirement, narrower than we're used to, and Minnesota voters, and not by a small margin, said they didn't want to do that. It sort of depends how you do it. Of course, we want eligible voters voting, and we've got an awesome record in that regard in Minnesota, but it's how you do it. What are the forms necessary in order to show that you are who you say you are and you live where you say you live? That's the key question. Not whether you do that, but how. And is it only through a government-issued photo ID? Or, as we've done for decades and decades in Minnesota, can you have a broad array of reasonable things that you can use that aren't necessarily that?
All right. I want to talk about former President Trump's claims about widespread fraud, and a lot of claims coming, at least from the right. He continues to claim that the 2020 presidential election was not fair and that there was substantial widespread fraud, but there is no proof that shows widespread election-changing fraud in any state that's been investigated. Republican lawmakers in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin, they investigated and or recounted. They found no widespread fraud. An investigation by the Associated Press looked into all the votes in those states, plus Pennsylvania. They found 473 total votes flagged as suspicious. That's out of 25.5 million cast in those states. President Trump hired 2 law firms to investigate. They didn't find anything. Trump's former Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, testified that there wasn't anything that checked out. So in your opinion, was there any widespread fraud in 2020 in this state? And how have these claims affected your job?
The answer to the first question is no. The last time I checked at the results post-2020, 2020 and an immediate aftermath, the number of allegations of misconduct that are provable in Minnesota was something like 19. 19 out of 3.3 million voters. That is a microscopic level. And not all of those were people who voted. That's even people who maybe registered and they shouldn't have and didn't vote. So I don't even know what the fraction of that was of people who actually voted. So it is a tiny, microscopic level of misconduct in Minnesota. And that's the important thing for people to know.
Also, a lot of people are concerned that undocumented immigrants will vote for the presidential race, but don't they risk deportation if they're caught?
Yes. On that specific issue, I have even more fresh numbers. So on the issue of undocumented people voting, yes. Not only is it a felony, it's a deportable felony, and it's a permanent bar to U.S. citizenship. Permanent. So you're going back to where you came from, and you can never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, become a citizen. That's number one. But look at our track record. Just this summer, a law professor at the University of St. Thomas here in the Twin Cities did a study or a report or a paper that he issued. And he looked back at 9 years worth of voting records in Minnesota from 2015 to 2024, so 9 years. During that period, 13.4 million Minnesotans cast ballots. So he looked at the range, including 13.4 million ballots. He found three people who were not citizens who had voted illegally in Minnesota. Now, everyone wishes, nobody more than me, that number was zero, okay? But that's 3 out of 13.4 million voters. That, too, is a microscopic level of misconduct.
And they were caught?
They were caught. Everyone should rest easy that we have a system that is fundamentally fair and accurate and honest and secure. And the numbers show it.
Let's continue down that path. Much of the trust issues have evolved around mail-in ballots, especially during the pandemic. How can you take people, just take us through the process of what happens when you how to get a mail-in ballot, when you mail it, what happens to it, and how do you ensure they're authentic and accurate?
Well, I hope you don't mind me somewhat hijacking your question, because I'll add a little color to what you just said, what you rightly asked.
Gently hijack it.
Gently. Sometimes people will ask me, so we'll come at it this way. They'll say, hey, how can this possibly be secure?
Right.
How can it possibly be secure? You're talking about mailing out hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million or more ballots, blank ballots out there in the mail,
right,
just waiting in unguarded residential mailboxes. What's to prevent someone from stealing 1 or 10 or 100 in one or more neighborhoods and just hoarding them and voting those ballots for themselves?
Okay.
So here's the answer.
Yeah.
When you order an absentee ballot to come to you, if you want to vote from home in Minnesota, you have to provide some personal identifying information. It can be a driver's license number, it can be part of a social security number and the like. Not a PIN number that you make up, but something that's objectively tied to you, like those things. And you have to sign the ballot, and you have to have a witness sign the ballot. Okay, back to the mailbox thief. The only way his crime would ever be successful is if he first knew the exact form of personal identifying information that the intended voter used when the intended voter ordered that ballot, and he forged that voter's signature, and he forged the witness signature. That even assumes he knows who the witness was. If he somehow knew who the witness was, he forged that person's signature. Only if all three of those things are true would that crime ever be successful. And I suspect that's the reason why, in the 9 years I've been doing this job, I cannot recall one single case of that happening. It is really locked down. It is really a secure and safe way to vote.
So in order for the mail-in ballot to be counted correctly, someone would have, like if you worked at a senior home, or let's say you have 100 people living in your house, you'd have to know all of their driver's license numbers and or social security numbers, forge their signature and forge a witness signature, and then get those things to pass through your filter, which is a judge from the Democratic Party, a judge from the Republican Party, who look to make sure that those numbers match up and those signatures match up, yeah?
Correct. And you bring up another point, which is that we have a law in the state of Minnesota that calls for this entity called an absentee ballot board. And every county and every local government has them, where exactly as you say, there are equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans that look at these ballots to make sure that the voter did it right.
So you mail it in, right? You put it in the box, you drop it, you're like, okay, there's my ballot.
Yep.
And it goes to the county seat, right?
County or sometimes.
So the election office.
Right.
And they're waiting, so they're locked away until they count them, yeah?
That's right.
And there's a big pile of them. And there's two people that sit in a chair, and they bring over a ballot one at a time, a ballot envelope with the ballot inside,
Correct.
one at a time. And someone from the left says, good. Someone from the right says, good. Yeah?
Yes.
And they have to agree.
They have to agree.
And then they're like, good, count the ballot.
Right.
That's how it works
Exactly how it works.
in every county.
In every county and every city in Minnesota. And only if it passes those rigorous tests is it even put in the pile to be counted. That's how rigorous this is. That's how many screens and filters this goes through. So mail voting is really locked down. It's really been successful and very popular in Minnesota because I think people do rightly have confidence in it.
Okay. So despite what we talked about, without the widespread evidence of fraud nationally, And despite the checks and balances that we just talked about, a recent Gallup poll found 58% of Americans, all Americans, have very or somewhat confidence in the accuracy of the presidential election. So positive number, 58% have very or somewhat confidence in the accuracy of the election. 84% of Democrats said this, 28% of Republicans said this. 28% of Republicans are essentially saying they have somewhat or a lot of confidence in the accuracy of the presidential election. 1 in 4.
I mean, it's a sad statement of the times that we live in. And I can't help but think that that is really based on outcomes, right? And it's sad, and I have no doubt that that pendulum swings over time from party to party.
It was reversed in 2004.
Exactly.
Where a vast majority of Republicans had, I think, in the 80th percentile of confidence in the elections. This is after Gore v. Bush.
Right.
And Democrats had a little bit lower
That's why I say
confidence.
I just have to believe nationally this is about outcomes. The good news is in that Minnesota, like in so many things, we are overperformers. You may have seen that the Star Tribune and Minnesota Public Radio a couple weeks ago or so came out with a poll, and our number, instead of the national number of 58% overall confidence, our number was 79% overall confidence in Minnesota.
Okay.
What the party breakdown was there, but that's a really good number. I mean, it's hard to get 79% of Minnesotans to agree on much of anything in a poll. So we take that as evidence that fundamentally people know and understand in Minnesota. It doesn't mean they agree with every part of the election system. I would never say that. Or that our system is perfect. Of course it isn't. But fundamentally, the vast majority of Minnesotans know in their gut that it is honest, it is fair, it is secure.
I'm not sure if you can talk about this or not. Just let me know if you cannot, because it involves a lawsuit. But right now in Hennepin County, there's a lawsuit. We're talking about approving absentee ballots, right? And from what I understand, the lawsuit is around whether or not Hennepin County is using a list that the GOP gave them for people who should be approving these ballots. And they did not select names from that list. I hope I'm getting this right. Is there anything you can talk about this controversy and whether it's right or not?
All I can say is you're getting the claim right.
Okay.
The claim is, and their interpretation of the law is, but I just got to be mum on that because we don't know what role or office will end up playing in this law.
Can you talk about what the law does say
Well,
or no?
what I can say generally speaking is I think you've described it correctly in the sense that there is this absentee ballot board. There is a requirement of party ballots, but how the law treats the
list
applied by the parties, I want to stay out of that.
Got it.
Because I don't know how
All right.
our office will be asked for a legal comment in court, so I really got to stay out of that.
Okay. How hacking proof are vote tabulators, and are they hooked up to the internet?
Yeah. So right before I came here to KARE 11 for this interview, I came from Blaine in Anoka County, where I attended what's called a public accuracy test. And I know that sounds like some boring administrative thing, but what it means is every single city, town, and county in Minnesota that uses this tabulation equipment, which is almost all of them, they have to do this thing, this public accuracy test, where they have to have a pre-noticed meeting, open to the public. Anyone can walk in off the street. You don't have to be a big shot. You don't even have to live in that community. Anyone in Minnesota can watch. And what they do is the election folks in that community, in full public view, try to trick the elections equipment. They will crease it and fold it, the ballot. They will overvote, undervote, put stray marks, do all sorts of stuff they're not supposed to do, put in a blank ballot to see if it accidentally counts. And only if the machines perform perfectly are they allowed for use in the upcoming election. That's security feature number one. Number two, under state law, none of those machines can be hooked up to the internet. No connection whatsoever during voting hours. And number three, and I always remind people about this, we are a paper ballot state, right? We don't put fingers on a keyboard and vote that way. Some places do around the country. We don't. We're good old-fashioned paper, which you can touch and feel and see, and that's your insurance policy. Because at the end of the night and at the end of the process, if someone says, hey, wait a minute, someone got into the computer, or someone got into the system or alleges that or thinks they saw that, you can reconcile good old-fashioned paper, and we got to keep that paper under lock and key for 2 years after every election.
Some of those machines are hooked up to the internet after the voting is closed?
Some are, yes.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm totally okay with that because we got paper. paper, there's a reason we call them unofficial election results on election night, because they're not official until you reconcile and balance what the machine says with a sample of what the paper says. So between those three security features, we're really on solid ground in Minnesota, and the record has been near perfect.
A lot of those battleground states that we mentioned where there was alleged fraud that was never found, they did total recounts in many of those states, right? How close were those?
Georgia, they were unbelievably accurate.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is pound for pound over time, the machines are actually more accurate than human counting. So when you hear places saying, well, we should go to hand counting, the thing about hand counting, it's okay at a recount where you have hand count and machine count, and you can go side by side. But the thing about hand counting is it takes more time, it's more expensive, and it's less accurate over time.
Really?
So having both is a good thing, where one checks the other.
Hand counting's less accurate?
It's less accurate over time.
Shows that, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
How do you respond to the narrative that batches of votes that are reported like late at night are, even after midnight, are somehow, ballot dumps or new ballots that weren't part of the original vote that was cast? What's your take on that narrative?
Honestly, crazy and inaccurate. And some of that has lived on from 2020. So let me give you a quick example. State of Pennsylvania, I'll take it out of Minnesota. Pennsylvania, the law then and now, so get ready for November 5th, then and now was, in Pennsylvania, all those absentee ballots that are coming in by the hundreds of thousands, mail votes, they can't even start opening those envelopes and processing them until the close of polls on election night. With the predictable result that in the state of Pennsylvania in 2020, and I'm assuming this year too, of course they're counting on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. Of course they are. Everyone warned them that that's what was going to happen in 2020 and will likely happen this year. So of course there are ballots added after election night, but that's not a dump. Those are a count of actual valid legal ballots cast by American citizens. That's what that is. It's not a dump. It's a valid count of the votes, but they're just votes that came in or couldn't even be touched or counted or processed until after the polls close by the hundreds of thousands or even millions. So of course it takes longer.
Got it. What should we expect and what should viewers and voters expect on election night as far as results and when we're going to get them?
Yeah, well, in Minnesota, we've got a really good record of having results by either the wee hours or certainly by dawn the next day. Sometimes there's an outlier, sometimes there's a glitch, but almost never. And one of the reasons we can guarantee that, for the most part, is that in Minnesota, our rule when it comes to mail ballots and absentee ballots is it's got to be back by election day. In some states, like California, their rule is, no, we just have a postmark rule, where as long as you pop it in the mail by election day and it arrives a week or 10 days later, you're okay, which is why in some of those other states, like California, not to pick on them, but it's true, you don't know the results.
It's delayed. We don't have that here, though. It's got to be at the polling place by election day?
Place by election day.
By poll close?
By poll close.
That's right.
That's it.
All right, let's go over some key dates.
Yeah.
When do people have to be registered by? And I know you can register at the polling place, but if you want to go over some of these items.
Right. Yeah, sure. Key dates. So one of the key dates, voter registration, we are fortunate that for over 50 years, we've had same day or election day voter registration, which means if someone needs to register or re-register, maybe they moved or had a name change or whatever, they can do it on game day in their polling place. Super simple, super easy. Let me give out our website because it's a great one-stop shop. It's mnvotes.gov, mnvotes.gov.
It'll tell you what documents you need to bring if you're registering same day.
It'll also, if I can say, it tells you where your polling place is. It can tell you if you want who or what is on your ballot. You can use that to order the ballot to come to you if you want to vote from home and not go to a polling place. But that's one thing that's coming up. So don't worry about voting or registering on election day. You can do that. That's one day. Another day, which starts on Friday the 18th, which as we're sitting here is tomorrow, is the date by which if you go in and vote in-person absentee, remember you can vote in the polling place on game day, that's one. You can vote in person early, that's two. So go to your city hall or county courthouse. You can find out on MN Votes where to go. Third is have the ballot to come to you, where you live, and vote from your couch or kitchen table. But if you're going to go in and vote in person, folks are going to notice starting on Friday the 18th that it's going to have a game day feel. What I mean by that is you no longer will have to put your ballot in an envelope, which then goes inside another envelope. You'll be able to feed it directly into the machine just like you do at a polling place on election day.
Okay.
So that's coming up. Those are kind of the two key dates, I think, for voters to have in mind. The other one, though, that I got to keep hammering is, remember, if you're sitting on a ballot now or in the next couple of weeks or so, make sure it gets there by Election Day. And you can do that in one of a number of ways. One, obviously, is pop it in the mail. And if you pop it in the mail, you don't have to say a prayer and just hope it gets there on time. You can track it like you can an Amazon package, PS package as a code, and you can know for sure whether it arrived. If you don't trust the mail, you can hand deliver it. If you're too busy to hand deliver it, under most circumstances, you can have someone you know and trust hand deliver it for you.
Isn't there a blackout date, though, of registering or early voting in between, as you say, game day
Yes.
and now?
And we're in it. Yes. I didn't know that's what you were getting at. Yes.
No, that's what I'm asking. Yeah. So what, people can no longer register right now?
Correct. You can no longer register right now, but you can register on game day, on Election Day in the polling place.
But if I want to vote early and I'm already registered,
Yes.
I can go and do that up until?
Absolutely. Up until the day before, close of business Monday, the day before the election.
So what you're saying is you don't have to wait in those super long lines on game day.
Right.
You can vote early if you would like to.
Correct.
And you go to that website, you'll find out where you're polling or where your polling place is, who's on the ballot, and how you can do it.
Right. Exactly right.
Little research goes a long way.
That's it. It's simple.
Well, listen, I'm grateful that you came here and sat down with us. You've always been extremely transparent, especially through the pandemic. With any question that we've had, you have answered it. And I'm grateful for that transparency, especially in these times.
Yeah. No, I think we have to have it. And that's one of the things that will continue to solidify the confidence that in Minnesota, the vast majority of voters have. And I want them to have that. You know, in our office, we don't care who someone votes for. We never talk about candidates or parties or causes or anything like that. What we do care about is that every one of Minnesota's eligible voters has all the information they need to make their own choices. What they do with that, that's their business. But we want everyone to have accurate, up-to-the-minute information about what the system is and how it works.
Secretary of State Steve Simon, thanks for coming in. Appreciate
Pleasure, as always. Thank
Yep,
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks.
And thanks for joining us on this CARE conversation. Hit us up on social media. You can find us on YouTube and CARE 11 Plus. We like to know what you think, so let us know.